next to share screen.
Okay.
There you go.
You see it? Otherwise, I see it if I need to jump in too.
I think we are recording now. So, all right, go for it, Laura.
Okay, all right. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Laura Rivas, and I'm one of the Fond du Lac Planning Department Food Sovereignty VISTA volunteers. I am going to be doing a kimchi making demo today using just a basic kimchi recipe. My qualifications for kimchi making, I guess, are that I lived in Korea for 2 years. So I know what a kimchi should taste like. And I've been making it for about a year now. And I've got it down to a pretty good science for myself. One thing I want to note is that kimchi is really flexible in terms of like the amount of spices you use or how you want it to taste. So a lot of these are ingredients that you can add more or less of depending on if you like garlic or if you like something particularly spicy or if you don't want it spicy. It can be adjusted to personal taste as you're cooking it, or if you make a batch using like this exact recipe, it might be too spicy or it might not be spicy enough. The next time you make it, if you want to, you can add more of whatever ingredient you think you would want more of and just experiment that way. So it is a really flexible recipe. And today we're going to be working with Napa cabbage, but there are several different types of kimchi that you can make. And one of the next popular, like the next biggest one would be daikon radish, which you may have seen at the grocery store. It's like a long white radish. It's typically cubed up and then kimchified, but I actually have never made that. So today's recipe is using Napa, although we did say that you can substitute with regular cabbage. But I worked with that. I can't say like how long salting times will be, but it is an option. And also, another note, like on substitutions, I'm using Gochugaru chili, which is a Korean chili powder, which is what you typically use with the kimchi recipe, but this can be difficult to find. I bought this on Amazon and had it delivered. But if you don't have Gochugaru chili, you can use regular chili powder. It will just have a slightly different taste because Gochugaru is just what's traditionally used. But at the end of the day, it will make your kimchi spicy and it'll add that taste that you're looking for in the kimchi. So we are going to get started with the Napa cabbage. In the instructions, oh yeah, sorry, let's go through the ingredients. So we have it down here. I think it might be mirrored, but you do need an airtight jar. I have this one here. It's a gallon jar. And one thing that's important to note is that you do want a good amount of space left in your jar once you're done putting your kimchi in. So here's our finished jar. I made this on Monday. It has not been opened up since Tuesday. So we are going to get a really nice, satisfying pop when we open it up during the class today. But you want a lot of headspace in the jar because the fermentation process will cause a lot of gas buildup. And if you overfill your kimchi jar, I've done this before and it caused a big mess. And it actually, even though it's airtight, there was so much pressure in the jar that it seeped out. And I had actually gone out for a day out in town. And when I came back to a puddle of kimchi juice all over the kitchen because it had exploded kind of, and well, not exploded, but like it had seeped out of the jar and caused a big mess. So make sure if you are using a smaller jar, try to make sure that you divide your kimchi into enough jars so that there's at least like a quarter of room left preferably more, but at least there has to be some headspace in order to make sure that it doesn't like bubble over during the fermentation process. And on another note, this is a fermented food. So kimchi is a traditional Korean dish, banchan dish, which means that it's used as a side whenever you go to a restaurant or whenever you're eating at home in a like typical Korean household, you will have kimchi as your side dish. Like it will be there and you just eat it as like an added condiment. You can eat it by itself, but it goes really well in several different recipes. You can make kimchi fried rice, like kimchi marigutsu, which is a noodle dish. It's delicious during the winter. You add ice and noodles, and it is really versatile. You can add it to anything. I like adding it to quesadillas, breakfast quesadillas. I know you can add it to English muffins or other things. It's really just a topping, a fermented topping that has a really sour, tangy, tart taste. And it really adds like a lot of dimension to dishes that you have, that you may like make regularly and you want to add a new flavor to. So we are going to get started. Kimchi does take a bit, it's a bit of a process. So I have already salted a large head of Napa. I salted it this morning. And so it's been like slowly, the moisture has been coming out for like 3 hours. And I chopped up most of it already. But I did leave a quarter to show you guys how to cut it. One thing, so I mentioned in the instructions that you want to start off at the bottom to avoid unnecessarily chopping the top layers. So you just cut from the bottom and then you use your hands to separate the top parts of the kimchi because the leaves are a little more delicate and they require you just need to be a little more careful with them. If you chop them up with a knife, it can make them too small. So you half it, and then you want to get rid of the cabbage stem. So you just chop it off, put it to the side, and then you want to make about 3 different cuts. For an average like sized or a large Napa cabbage, you can get about 3 cuts out of the slice of Napa. So they're about 2 inches. So you just slice it off. And the thing with the leaves, this is already shrunken down because it has been salted. Typically it would be a little bigger, but you just chop it up into 3 different pieces and you put them into your bowl. And you do the same thing to all of the quarters because you want nice bite-sized pieces. If you chop them up a little too small or a little too big, it just affects like how easy it is to eat because the kimchi does get shriveled up during the salting process. So it could come out a little too small. And if it's too big, it'll just be an awkward mouthful size. So just chop them up and put them into your bowl. So for the salting process, I use kosher salt and I dissolve about a quarter cup of salt in a bowl of water, and then I rinse the Napa. This was already done in the morning, but I rinsed the Napa in that quarter cup of salt and like 4 cups of water. And then just to like loosen it up, like start the process going. And then you transfer it over to a new bowl and you add the remaining amount of salt, 3/4 of a cup. And you make sure that you get the salt all over every single piece of kimchi, because every single piece of Napa cabbage, because that's part of the fermentation process. It shrivels up the Napa cabbage and it gets it soft and ready to add the sauce or the spices and everything. If you one big thing to note, so here, some of the outer Napa cabbage leaves can be a little beaten up, especially like in the grocery store during transport and everything. They get a little brown or damaged. You want to get rid of those leaves because this is a fermented food that's going to go in the fridge. It's going to be outside. You just want to get rid of that to try to make it as to keep as many like good leaves as possible only in the jar. So once you are done prepping your cabbage, all you have to do is take it and you're going to rinse it 3 times. I usually just fill up the bowl, swish around the water, and then I get a strainer and I pour it out and I just repeat the process 3 times. And it's pretty easy. It's just a little awkward because sometimes it's a lot of cabbage, and if you don't have like an industrial strainer, it can get a little messy, but you want to make sure that you rinse it out 3 times just to keep it from being too salty, and start the process, or be able to add it into your spice mixture. So next, okay, so one thing you want to make is a flour mixture, which actually does need to be heated up on a stove top. So it's very simple. You just want, sorry, let me get the measurements. You are going to want a cup of water and 2 tablespoons of flour. And you're going to want to heat it up and get it to a thick, bubbly consistency. And that flour mixture is going to be used to help coat the spice mixture onto the Napa cabbage and the green onions, and make sure that everything is nice and coated, nice and evenly coated, to further along the fermentation process. So while we do that, we are going to work on the spice mixture. So So,
Hey, Laura, we have one question. Someone was asking about the brown onion. Is that similar to just a yellow onion, I think?
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's a yellow onion. Honestly, I've used red onions before, and probably white onions as well. It's just going to add an oniony flavor. So if you prefer like a specific type of onion, that is totally okay. I think you can pretty much use any kind of onion that you have on hand. Like I said, it is pretty flexible with the types of ingredients you use. At the end of the day, like it's the chili powder or it's the fermentation process that will like really get it to taste however you want it to taste. So we're gonna use 2 tablespoons of flour. And you're gonna want to mix it into the
That's okay. You're just making a roux.
Yeah, just like to make it the spices to stick. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to heat up the flour mixture. We're gonna want like I said, a thick, like bubbly consistency. It'll take a few minutes, just like on medium heat, and then you need to have this mixture cooled completely, because if you add it in when it's still hot, it will cause negative reactions of like the cabbage. You don't want the cabbage to get hot or like touch boiling liquid. So make sure that you leave enough time for the flour mixture to cool down completely in order to, before you add it to your spice mixture. So next we are going to create the seasoning mixture. And this one's pretty easy. So we're going to get another bowl. And this will kind of be like your mixing bowl. So I've brought in a immersion blender. I prefer this because you can just stick it into your bowl, whatever bowl you're using, and it causes a lot less cleanup. But you can use a blender in like slow pulses, or a food processor. And if you don't have anything like that, any of these tools, you can use even like a mortar and pestle, because you want like a pasty, not a liquid, but you want a paste-like consistency with your onions, and your garlic, and your ginger, and your fish sauce and everything. So it's similar to the flour mixture. It's going to be like a textured blend, and you just want to get it to the point where it's not liquefied, but it is like a paste. So I've already cut up with whatever tool you're using. You might not need to chop them up. I started slicing them, so I just went ahead with it. But you can just put them in your bowl.
Do you want me to show them?
Yeah. So that's what the flour mixture should look like. It's thick, as you can see, it's like thick, loopy, and we're just gonna wait for that to cool down completely. I usually put it like in a cold water bath because I might be in a rush. So I leave it to cool, and that brings down the temperature pretty quick. But so you're gonna want to take your onions and just, I'm gonna make them a little smaller. Add them into the bowl. And like I said, I'm adding 2 onions. Some recipes only call for like maybe 1. I like it oniony. So I add 2. And I just toss them in. And then I'm just gonna start with the immersion blender. This can get a little messy, so usually put like a towel or something over it, but it's okay. Like I said, you can use a blender. It might be a little too loud, so I'm just gonna. Okay, so it's taking a little longer than usual. Well, okay, so we're gonna want to keep doing the onions. You can toss in your garlic. I've already peeled it. I ended up only using 1 head of garlic, but you just toss it in with your onions. And again, you don't want to over blend it because you don't want a liquid texture, a liquid consistency. You want textured paste. So try not to like, if you're using an immersion blender or a blender, just don't let it go on too long, because then that'll ruin the consistency. I'm crying a little bit. The onions are pretty strong.
This is room temp.
Okay. Oh gosh. Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna wipe my eyes real quick.
We will have directions and substitutions and recipes posted with the video as well. I just wanted to kind of give that update while Laura's tending to herself. Thank you all so much as we kind of move through this process.
Okay. Sorry, so one of the hazards, the onions can be pretty strong, and they can start the waterworks, but but after you're done blending the onions, you just move into the spices. So this is kind of the last like occupational hazard that you got to deal with. It's almost done. Thank you. It's a little sticky to get on. Okay. Oh, yes, sorry. Okay. So I have made the blend. It's a little rougher than usual just for the sake of time, but it should look something like this, maybe a little more blended. And at the end of the day, this will just, it will translate into the texture if you leave it rougher than what it should be, but it will taste the same. It'll have the same flavors. So that's something, it should look similar to this. And then we're gonna move on to the spices. You are going to want your fish sauce and your oyster sauce. If you are vegetarian or vegan, or you don't eat seafood, you can just keep this out of the recipe. It will take away from some of the sorry. Let me just step away real quick.
There are some really amazing non-fish varieties of, like, they make a mushroom-based oyster sauce, and then they also do a non-fish fish sauce. So that's also something that you could maybe think about if you have an allergy or it's just not something that you want to eat. So we can also put that in the substitutions. And for those of you who are virtual, those onions are so strong. So if only you could smell them.
I'm so sorry. I guess it's happened before, and I guess I've just never been on camera to have to like worry about crying. But yeah, that it may happen to you. But they're blended up now, and it's a lot better. So we are going to add in our fish paste. So like Elizabeth said, there are substitutions. I've never used them, but they will work the same most likely. And if you just want to avoid it altogether, you just, don't include it. You could just add more salt or to get that like salty flavor. Some recipes also include like anchovy paste or baby shrimp, but we don't have that. So there really are so many things that you can add into the kimchi. They're a little more specialized, but what we have here are basic ingredients that I found all of this except for the chilies at Super One. So this is just something really basic that you can whip up with local ingredients or locally found ingredients. So you are going to want 3 tablespoons of fish sauce. Again, if it turns out that you like this like flavor, you can add more. If you don't, you can add less. It really depends on what you want. And then we're gonna go for 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce. And this is a thicker texture. And oyster sauce adds like a bit of a sweet taste. And then we're gonna go with a teaspoon of sugar. So the sugar,
What is the sugar?
yeah, so the sugar is actually, I mean, it adds flavor and it also, I think it helps with I'm not like too, I'm not too sure. It adds to the fermentation process as well. And it's just to help with the taste, I guess, as well. And it's typically, a lot of recipes call for Korean new sugar, but you can substitute with regular granulated sugar. And I guess it's for taste purposes and for fermentation purposes. And then you're gonna want to check. Okay, so right now you have almost all of the flavor ingredients, and this is where you can add your chili. So again, totally depends on how spicy you want it, or like what level you can take. A lot of recipes call for 1 cup. I actually don't know. Okay. So I'm gonna go with ½ a cup. But depending on, so yeah, like I said, if you're a spicy type of person, you can add more than a cup. But I do suggest like trying it out first, gauging, seeing like what you can take, and then leveling up from there, because it can get pretty spicy. And with the garlic, depending on the level of garlic and onion that you add in as well, that can really affect like the overall taste. One time, like from personal experience, I added in like, I think I went a little overboard and I added like 3 heads of garlic, and at that point, actually, it was kind of inedible because the garlic, it's raw garlic. So it wasn't too pleasant to eat. And I ended up having to add more like ingredients to it, doubling up the ingredients to even out the garlic. But you just want to mix it all up. Like I said, this is a little chunkier just because of the blending issue. But it should look something like this. Yours will probably be a little more paste-like. But this is what the final product should look like. And also at this point, we can go one more time and add in the garlic. You could just use a grater. I'm just gonna slice it up a bit.
The ginger.
So sorry, yes, this is the ginger. And I'm using like a small knob. You can use more if you want. I really recommend that you make like an initial test batch, figure out what you like, and then continue experimenting every time you make a batch. This is going to make enough for about, depending on how often you eat it, for about a few weeks for one person. Oh, that's great. So the kimchi cabbage, yeah, I find mine at Super One. And it's also something that you can grow. I wanted to grow it during last summer season, and I'm just gonna go in again with the immersion blender just to try to get that textured paste and get the ginger. But this is actually a recipe that you could do completely like from garden to table. Almost everything, you could grow the chilies yourself if you wanted to. Well, I suppose except for like the fish sauce and everything, but like almost everything here can be grown in your garden. So it's really such a fun recipe to make, and pretty simple once you like get the hang of it. Okay, so this is that texture that you want. So once more, here it is. And now we are going to be able to add in the flour mixture. And again, you want kind of like pancake batter is the texture that you want, the consistency that you want. And make sure that it's cooled to at least room temperature. And you can mix it in, because I don't know if you were able to see, but it is a little thick. It's like a thick paste before you add the flour mixture. And once you add this in, this is what helps you spread it onto every piece of Napa, all of the little pieces of Napa that you chopped up, and lets you coat it all evenly. Oh, yeah. So if you are gluten-free, there is another alternative. It's dashimi powder. I have not worked with that. So there is an alternative. I don't know if dashimi is gluten-free, but it is like a known alternative that I know that you can use. I'm guessing maybe That is something, that's a good question. There you'd have to look into alternatives. We can look into alternatives for that and list another ingredient, a substitution for the flour mixture. But right now we are using 2 tablespoons of flour mixed with a cup of water. So now all you have to do is stir it all up. And okay, and I think you can see it's starting to move a lot more now. Before it was that thick paste, and now it's blending up pretty nicely. Oh, okay. Next will be your green onion. So this is just something that you add in. It's another bit of green. I have like julienned my green onions into matchsticks. So just cutting them into matchsticks. I take the green onion and I just chop off the ends, make sure that you get rid of any like limp leaves that may be on each onion. And then I chop off the tips too, because again, you kind of just want to have like the freshest, nicest bits of each ingredient that you put in. And then I chop them in half again, and then I just go lengthwise. It's a little difficult with the gloves, but you just want to go lengthwise and slice them up thinly into nice little matchsticks. And then, so like I said, this is just an ingredient that you add in. You can add carrots. I have done that before. It just depends on like what sort of, what other vegetables you want to add in. I've really only seen green onions and carrots, but they do add a lot of dimension to the flavor. So it just depends on how you're feeling, what flavors you like in your kimchi. But today we're going with green onions, and then just pick them up and toss them in. Rest. And then you want to coat them. Make sure that everything gets coated in the spice mixture. Okay. That's how it should look. And then last but not least, sure. So our Napa cabbage has been drained and rinsed 3 times already. It will definitely still taste salty, and that's fine. That's what, there should still be salt residue on it. But we are going to pour it all in to the seasoning mixture.
Can I pop in?
Yeah.
So one thing that I wanted to mention is that those of you who are concerned about like or diabetes or anything like that, like this is a very salty dish, but it's also very, very pungent. So you use it sparingly. And it's meant to be like a condiment. It's not just like a meal in and of itself. So although it has these components of like the sugars and the salt and stuff like that, it's going to be just fine for those of you who are concerned about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I know definitely in Korea, it was something that we ate every meal, but just because you don't eat a lot of it, but it's supposed to be really healthy. Like it's a fermented food and it's got like a lot of health benefits. But yeah, it is a salty dish. As you can tell from the cup of kosher salt that we used. But it does get washed out, but it is something to be aware of. So all we have to do is mix it up. I'm just making sure to coat each slice of Napa. And it helps. This is a really big bowl, so it's easy to get everything evenly coated. Smaller bowls, it can be a little messier, but this is looking good. So this is done. The last step is to transfer everything to your airtight container. This is where it also gets messy because it's a wide mouth jar, but just want to be careful putting it in. You'll need a napkin to like clean up the outside. And then you're gonna put it in here. And remember, like I said, it's important to remember to leave enough headspace in the jar, in whatever jar or container you're using, airtight container you're using, because depending on how long you are going to ferment your cabbage, it will build up gas. And you're also going to want to be careful when you open it up. I usually will show you because we're going to open up the finished jar right now, but it will open with a pop. So that's a good thing, right? Yeah, it's a good thing. You want it to be. That's like, that creates the flavor that you, that like tangy sour flavor. It's the fermentation process that's like taken place, and it gives you kimchi. So one thing to note, this process, the fermentation process, is totally up to you. Or if this is your first time making the kimchi, you might want to only leave it out for like overnight in a warm place in like ambient room temperature, because that will that'll kickstart the fermentation process, and then you stick it in the fridge and that'll stop it. The taste will be a lot more mild compared to a jar that has been fermented for about 4 days in your room temperature house. So the jar we have here, it will be pretty sour because I left it out for 4 days. But the moment you stick it in the fridge, that stops, or that dramatically slows down the fermentation process, and you start to control what it will taste like after that. So if you want something very tangy and sour, you leave it outdoors for longer. If you want it less potent, just stick it in the fridge the following morning and you'll be good to go. And you can start eating it whenever. The older kimchi is, the stronger it'll be. The fresher kimchi is, the less potent it'll taste. So it's really up to you. You can experiment with what you want. We're gonna put this one away. We can do like a 1 day kimchi, 1 day fermentation, like outdoor fermentation time for that. This is the batch that we're gonna open up right now. Okay, so like I said, it will open up with a pop. I'm gonna put a towel over it, and then, I'm scared. Okay, we're gonna go. Ooh. Okay, so it leaves, you're gonna want that towel because otherwise it'll spray all over you. here we have it. It's bubbling up. So the sign of a kimchi that's doing great with the process, it'll get bubbly. And oftentimes as you're fermenting it, so while this was going, I was churning it, I was shaking it like whenever I like stopped by, whenever I passed by it in the kitchen, it's I'll close it. But I just shook it, I gave it a good shake to make sure that everything stayed like coated, because the top layer might not be getting the same amount of juice. And so just move it, make sure that you're moving it consistently. And that's pretty much it. That's when you're done with you can taste it as it's fermenting. And when you're happy with the taste, your kimchi's done and you can stick it in the fridge, and that's it.
How long does it last in the fridge?
I think it's a couple months that you can leave it. I've never left it. I usually finish it within a few weeks. So it doesn't last a couple months, but I think it can be up to a few months. And if it just depends on, like I said, the older it gets, the more potent it will be. So it really depends on your taste. One way to test, if your kimchi smells off or you can see visible mold growth on that should not happen. So your kimchi has gone bad and you can just get rid of it. You can give it a smell. It is a very strong smell, but you can tell, I think you can tell when it smells bad, like if it's gone bad, if it's spoiled. And if you're worried that it has, it's better to be safe than sorry, and you can just get rid of it. But yeah, we're gonna have samples available. And yeah, are there any questions for the process? Otherwise, I think we can end it.
Samples will be available Monday through Friday next week. This is all that we have. This, wait, are you leaving us?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have this kimchi and then the batch that she made as well. And so you can take as much or as little as you want. If you just want to try a little bit, we've got little takeaway cups. And if you want to take a lot because you like kimchi, then that's also available to you as well. Yeah, so Monday through Friday, typically 10 to 4. But I can also, set some aside for you if you want.